Good afternoon. We begin with breaking news of a catastrophic escalation in the Middle East. In the last 24 hours, the region has been plunged into what analysts are calling the most dangerous military confrontation since the Gulf War. This is a Kenya News Update Today special report. I'm your host. We are tracking two simultaneous, massive military campaigns. First, Israel has resumed strikes on Tehran, targeting government buildings and military infrastructure for a second consecutive day. Second, and in direct response, Iran has launched what its Revolutionary Guard describes as a sixth wave of coordinated missile and drone attacks. Their target? 27 United States military bases across the Middle East. The death toll is already staggering. Iranian state media confirms at least 201 people killed across 24 provinces since this joint U.S.-Israeli assault began. For context, Iran, officially the Islamic Republic of Iran, is a country in West Asia with a population of over 90 million. It is the sixth largest country in Asia and a regional power. This conflict, however, is no longer contained to Iran and Israel. The fire is spreading. Reports indicate Israel has now bombarded Lebanon, expanding the conflict after the massive Israel-U.S. attack on Iran that President Donald Trump launched with the stated aim of toppling Tehran's ruling clerics. Israeli forces pounded targets across Lebanon, including Beirut, after Hezbollah, the Tehran-backed armed Shiite Muslim movement, fired rockets towards Israel in retaliation. The global economic shockwave is immediate. Global oil prices have spiked after at least 3 ships were attacked near the Strait of Hormuz, as Iran continues its retaliatory strikes. 2 vessels were struck, and an unknown projectile exploded near a third. Iran has now warned ships not to pass through the strait, which carries about 20% of the world's oil and gas. This is a full-blown regional war with global implications. Let's break down the sequence of events that brought us to this precipice. Our timeline begins 48 hours ago. At approximately 10 p.m. local time on March 1, 2026, U.S. and Israeli forces initiated a coordinated air and missile campaign against high-value targets inside Iran. This was not a limited strike. According to military analysts, it was a decapitation attempt, targeting command centers, nuclear facilities, and Revolutionary Guard headquarters. President Trump, in a brief statement from the White House, called it a necessary action to dismantle a regime of terror. The initial wave involved over 120 stealth aircraft and cruise missiles. Iranian air defenses were overwhelmed. Within 6 hours, Israel announced it had achieved air supremacy over Tehran, but Iran was not caught completely off guard. Their response was not immediate but calculated. They absorbed the first blow, then retaliated with overwhelming force across a different battlefield. This brings us to the core of Iran's strategy: asymmetric warfare. Instead of a direct head-on clash with U.S. carrier groups, they targeted the American footprint across the region. The number is critical: 27 bases. These are not small outposts. They include major installations in Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, was reportedly hit by at least 15 ballistic missiles. The damage assessment is ongoing, but early reports suggest significant infrastructure damage and casualties among U.S. personnel, though the Pentagon has not released official numbers. Let's visualize the scale of this Iranian counter-strike. The geographic spread is immense. Now, simultaneously, Iran continued striking Gulf states from Jordan to Saudi Arabia with drone swarms. This multi-front assault is designed to stretch U.S. and allied defenses thin. It appears to be working. The human cost, however, is the most tragic metric. The confirmed death toll of 201 in Iran includes both military personnel and civilians caught in the crossfire. Hospitals in Tehran are reportedly overwhelmed. But that number is almost certainly a low estimate, as communications are disrupted in many areas. Independent verification is nearly impossible at this moment. To understand Iran's capability to launch such a widespread attack, we must look at its military doctrine. For decades, Iran has invested not in matching the U.S. Air Force plane for plane, but in developing vast arsenals of drones and missiles. Their drone technology, often reverse-engineered or sourced from other actors, is cheap, plentiful, and effective. Their missile forces are among the largest in the region. This doctrine of forward defense means projecting power through proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, and maintaining the ability to strike anywhere within a 2,000-kilometer radius. The attack on the 27 bases is the ultimate expression of that doctrine. But the conflict has now leapt beyond a U.S.-Iran-Israel triangle. The expansion into Lebanon is a critical and dangerous new front. Israel's bombardment of Beirut's southern suburbs, a Hezbollah stronghold, marks the most severe exchange of fire between the two since the 2006 war. Hezbollah is no minor militia, it is a state within a state, possessing a rocket arsenal estimated at over 130,000 projectiles, many precision-guided. If Hezbollah fully enters the war, Israel could face a barrage unlike anything in its history, threatening cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv. The Israeli Defense Forces have mobilized reserve units along the northern border. This is a war on three fronts for Israel: Iran directly, Iranian proxies in Lebanon, and likely soon, renewed hostilities from Hamas in Gaza. The strain on their famed Iron Dome defense system will be unprecedented. The economic dimension cannot be overstated. The attack on shipping near the Strait of Hormuz is a deliberate act of economic warfare. This narrow waterway is the world's most important oil choke point. 20% of global oil supply, approximately 21 million barrels per day, passes through it. The immediate price spike was over 15%, with Brent crude soaring past $120 a barrel. For a global economy still recovering from previous shocks, this is a devastating blow. Kenya, and indeed all of Africa, will feel the ripple effects through increased fuel prices, transportation costs, and potential inflation. Energy analysts fear a prolonged closure of the strait could trigger a global recession. Let's examine the potential for further escalation. Several flashpoints could ignite an even wider war. First, the Persian Gulf itself. The U.S. Fifth Fleet is headquartered in Bahrain. Direct confrontation between U.S. naval vessels and Iranian fast attack craft or anti-ship missiles is a high possibility. Second, Syria. Both U.S. forces and Iranian-backed militias operate there. A miscalculation could lead to a deadly clash. Third, Yemen. The Houthis, backed by Iran, have already demonstrated the ability to strike deep into Saudi Arabia and the UAE with drones and missiles. They will almost certainly increase their attacks, further destabilizing the Arabian Peninsula. The international reaction has been one of profound alarm. The United Nations Security Council has called an emergency session, but with the U.S., a permanent member, being a direct combatant, the prospects for a diplomatic solution are dim. Russia and China have issued strong statements condemning the U.S.-Israeli aggression and calling for an immediate ceasefire, but have stopped short of promising military support for Iran. European powers are divided, with some calling for restraint and others feeling threatened by Iran's regional ambitions, offering tacit support to the U.S. action. The Arab world is similarly split. Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, while historically adversarial with Iran, are terrified of being caught in the middle. They have publicly called for de-escalation while privately, sources say, they are urging the U.S. to finish the job against the Iranian regime. This is the ultimate dilemma for Washington's allies. They fear Iran, but they also fear the chaos of a region-wide war. Now, let's analyze the strategic objectives. From the U.S. and Israeli perspective, the goal appears to be regime change in Tehran. This is a high-risk, high-reward gamble. Success would mean the elimination of a chief regional adversary, a potential normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab world, and a major blow to groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Failure or a protracted conflict could mean thousands of U.S. casualties, a shattered Middle East order, and a global economic crisis. From Iran's perspective, this is an existential fight for survival. Their objective is to inflict enough pain on U.S. assets and allies to force a withdrawal and negotiation, proving that the cost of attacking Iran is prohibitively high. They are betting that American public opinion and President Trump's political calculus in an election year cannot withstand a long, bloody conflict with heavy U.S. losses. The wild card is the nuclear dimension. Iran's nuclear program has been a central point of contention for years. If Iranian leadership believes the regime is truly facing extinction, will they rush to weaponize their nuclear material as a final deterrent? This is the nightmare scenario that keeps security experts awake at night. The potential for a tactical nuclear exchange, while still low, is now higher than at any point in the last 50 years. On the ground, the humanitarian situation is deteriorating by the hour. In Tehran, residents are facing a second day of aerial bombardment. Power and water supplies are intermittent. Social media videos, though difficult to verify, show massive plumes of smoke rising over the capital. In southern Lebanon, thousands of civilians are fleeing north, away from the Israeli border. The UN Refugee Agency is preparing for a potential exodus of hundreds of thousands. The Red Cross and Red Crescent are appealing for safe corridors to deliver aid, but in a war with this many actors, such guarantees are fragile. For Kenya, And for Africans watching from afar, the implications are profound. Beyond the immediate economic pain of higher oil prices, there are strategic concerns. Kenya contributes troops to international peacekeeping missions. Will they be drawn into a new stabilization force if this war ends? Furthermore, the conflict threatens to radicalize populations and could inspire copycat attacks by extremist groups in Africa who see this as a war against Islam. The stability of the entire Horn of Africa, which borders the Red Sea and is sensitive to Middle Eastern tensions, is now at risk. As we conclude this deep dive, we are left with more questions than answers. Has President Trump miscalculated Iran's willingness and ability to retaliate so broadly? Can Israel withstand a multi-front war of attrition? Will the international community find a voice to stop the bleeding, or are we witnessing the start of a conflict that will redefine the 21st century? The numbers so far are grim: 201 confirmed dead, 27 U.S. bases attacked, 3 ships hit, and oil prices up over 15%. But these are just the opening statistics of a war that shows no signs of abating. The coming 48 hours will be decisive. Will there be a second, even larger U.S.-Israeli strike aimed at crippling Iran's retaliatory capabilities? Will Iran attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz entirely? The world holds its breath. This has been a Kenya News Update Today special report. Subscribe to Kenya News Update Today for continuing coverage of this developing crisis.